Hello. Hi. Welcome to Mommy is Thriving. I am Sami Galbo, your host. On today's show, we have an amazing friend of mine, Courtney Cecil. She is founder of the Working Moms Movement. Oh, yeah, we are. Helps working moms go from stretched thin and stuck in their to-do lists to in control and fully present for what matters the most in life, at work, at home, and in their own lives. Through her proven system, she guides you from constantly juggling your to-do lists and mental load to confidently owning your time and showing up for what matters most. She is also a speaker, and published author, podcast host of the Lights Management System for Working Moms, and previously served as head of culture at a Fortune 50. She studied industrial and systems engineering at Virginia Tech, is a proud wife and mom, and is based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hi, Courtney. Welcome.
Good morning, Sammy. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm so excited for this. I'm like, everything that you do and support and promote is everything that we're all about here. I struggle with the mommy burnout, as I'm sure you do as well, and really finding those tools to really navigate life and navigate being a working mom in a world that isn't so much in support of the working mom lifestyle. Finding someone like you out there just really helps everything that we encompass as women, as moms, as leaders at home and at work. So, yeah, you've said your heart is in helping women feel less alone and more in control. Why is community so crucial for working moms today, especially compared to generations before us?
Yeah, I believe that something about motherhood is inherently a little lonely, even when we are surrounded by millions, literally millions of people that are going through a similar walk of life. It's not the exact same walk of life. And you layer in your pregnancy journey, your labor and delivery, your postpartum, your uh, individual family, and the dynamics of your kids, the dynamics with your partner, the dynamics with your parents or your in-laws. All of that layers into a very unique experience that inherently makes your journey uniquely yours. And that's why I believe that community and just building it intentionally is that much more important because void of that, you are going to feel alone. You are going to feel like you are carrying the weight of the world by yourself. And there's something inherently powerful about surrounding yourself with other badass women who are going through the same thing you are at the exact same time.
Yeah, exactly. And you are one of one, right? And I think that's the biggest thing to that I just took away from that, because it's my journey and your journey are not the same, but there are congruent paths that we take together that are similar. And yes, our perspectives and the way that we mom and the way that we go along our journey, I think there are pieces of that and facets of that that everyone can take away from, right? And I think that, I love that you're so present and you're so mindful of that and you're able to pull on other people's experiences. And that's huge. I think that it's really hard being a mom in this hyper digital world. And I think that, you and I both understand that so well because we really lived through that loneliness during COVID. And, what gaps in support tools or mindsets do you most often see among the moms that you really work with?
Apropos to your question, Sammy, the biggest mindset gap I see is feeling like you do need to do it alone. And isn't that ironic to the questioning? And part of that is just in the struggle that most moms have in asking for help. Sometimes it is the self-imposed pressure of feeling like everybody else is doing it. Sometimes it is just comparing yourself against generations past. So as an example, I had a stay-at-home mom. She did big things. I got the gourmet meals. I got the elaborate parties. I I got all of the creme de la creme experience as a child. So it'd be very easy to find myself in the trap of seeing what she was able to do and then questioning, well, why the heck can I do that? But there's a lot of reasons I can't do it. First of all, she didn't work outside the home. It was her full-time job to care for us. Second of all, we live a much busier life than we ever did before. And that inherently slows us down as well because there's just all of this expectation at a very, very young age for the kids to be wildly busy, like busy, busy, busy. Busy is a badge of honor, which is also crap. But when and then you think about social media and all this other wasted time and pressure that gets added to it. It gives us this impression that our standards need to be somewhere else. And it's hard to sometimes take a step back from that and call a timeout and say, you know what? That's their life. It's not mine. I don't have to do this alone, whether it be surrounding myself with other people like working moms who are going through it, or whether that be actually getting support. So I don't live near family. I had no support raising my boys when they were little. They're 8 and 9 now, so at a completely different space. But when they were little, I didn't have local support from a family perspective. So I had to learn different conventional ways of childcare. I had to learn how to outsource. I had to learn how to delegate intentionally and permanently to my husband so he could carry both the physical load and the mental load of managing the house and managing kids. So I learned very early on, not only could I not do it alone and maintain the standards I wanted, but I had to learn how to engage other people very differently and very creatively to make it all work. So that is very much part of what I do and what I help working moms specifically with now is figure out how to not do it alone and how to treat your home life like your work life. So when you think about work, particularly in your role, it's planning, it's organization, it is implementing systems. And oftentimes we apply those skills at work, but we forget we can apply those same type of skills to our personal life, including the way we manage our home. So part of what I do is help moms figure out how to plan, how to organize, and how to institutionalize systems in their family life and their home life. So that way it's easier to delegate, it's easier to outsource, and you're not actually carrying the weight of it alone.
That's amazing. And that resonates so much with me because I think that, we forget that all of the skills that we use and in our jobs on a daily basis are really applicable at home, right? Like the way I lead a meeting, the way I'm present, the way I am around my peers is so different at work than I feel at home. Like I feel like I have all the respect in the world at work and people, really listen to what I have to say. And at home, don't get me wrong, my employees are 4 and 6. So I think that's a little different home.
I love clever. I'm going to use that. That's a clever one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll be here all day. Literally. But I think it's just so different because, where we get the validation at work, right? When we see something and when we check it off on our to-do list, we forget so much of that at home, right? And I think that there is an amazing way that we can apply all of those skills at home and at work. So, like for me with my 6-year-old, right? Like we started in the morning before he can have his iPad time and his tech time or whatever he feels like doing in the morning. He has to get dressed. He has to make his breakfast, and like, yes, when I was 6, was I necessarily making my own breakfast? Probably not. But for me in my life and in my working mom role, I need him to be doing things like that to take the pressure off of me, And so, he's now started to understand, okay, I need to fill up my water bottle in the morning. I need to make sure that I'm fully dressed so that mommy can help me with my hair. I can put my lunchbox in my thermos in my lunchbox. Like, all those things he's starting to understand. Oh, if I do that, mommy's much happier in the morning. And, like, yes, the validation isn't there exactly how it would be if I got a good job at work or I see the productivity of my team, but it's the same thing, right? Like, I'm starting to see those transitions with him, and he's like elevating to a level that he becomes helpful and more helpful, and it's empowering him and giving him the tools that he can do his chores in the morning, and that's huge because we don't realize, sometimes I feel like I put pressure on my kids to help more, but I just think, I was an only and both of my parents worked and I kind of had to figure it out. Whereas, my kids, there's two of them, but, both mommy and daddy work. So there is that congruency. But, you know, like you said, there's so many external pressures. It's like it's such a different world, and uh, it's interesting to hear you say that like you don't live around family. And unfortunately, I lost my mom 3 years ago now, which is crazy. Literally in 12 days, it will be the 3 year anniversary of that. And, these past 3 years are so different than what I would have thought that they would have looked like without having her here. And, for me, I mean, people have heard me talk about this to no end, so I'll leave it there. But, I find that my mom was still doing so much of the executive functioning skills for me, even as an adult in my mid 30s. Like she was still doing so much, even though, I was married with kids and had two kids and everything else. But, I think I was kind of allowing her to do it so that I didn't have to. So I took away from the mental load. But it's like, okay, well, now that it's my life, my family, my everything, I'm like, okay, I have to instill those skills in my children so they don't become miniature versions of me where they need mom's help to do things,
I think that's so important. So one, I mean, it emphasizes the importance of the role of the mom. And I think that's really cool. That your mom still remains incredibly present in your life right now. By virtue of course, you walking around, you are quite literally here because she was here and because she put you here, but also the way that she continues to inspire your parenting, which is really, really cool. And I think that oftentimes I see many peers of mine who are not they're carrying the load for their kids. They're doing it all for them. I'll tell you what, that is not how our generation was raised. Like, we had chores, we had really strong expectations that I don't see happening in many households anymore. So the fact that you are being intentional about passing along responsibility to him, you're right, it empowers him. It's going to create his independence, but it's also going to be, as you just acknowledged, what enables him to thrive and survive on his own independently, which is ultimately our most fundamental responsibility as parents.
Yeah, I'm really like you just hit the nail on the head with that one for me because it's so true, I mean, that's all we want. We want to make sure that our tiny humans grow up to be successful members of society, right? Like
That's it. That's it. It's really that simple. At the end of the day, it's that simple.
that's exactly right. Like we just need to make sure that we do our job to make sure that they don't become a problem for you, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
That's it in a nutshell, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever they do in their lives, let them be an asset to society rather than a deterrent. Like
Yeah.
you really need that.
Yep.
Awesome. No, it's so true. I do have a question for you. So talk to me a little bit. Walk me through how your group coaching fosters both personal growth and that sisterhood that we're all craving. I sometimes think like we're so in tune to be like, oh, I just need a little therapy, but like talk to me how having that peer relationship and kind of that group dynamic really helps our generation of working moms.
Yeah, there's a couple things beneath that. First of all, the women in my program are going through a transformation. They are essentially saying, listen, I've got let's pretend that their youngest was a newborn. They've got 18 years of getting through this journey still left, and that is a long time to feel like you are not totally in control. So they are all committed to creating systems in their life that will put them in a place where they feel totally in control and they do have the breathing room to really enjoy the journey themselves. They have the mental clarity of how they want to do life, that they're actually going to be able to be present with their kids. Those things are huge. So there's something just really powerful about going through transformation with other people. And I think that's important to acknowledge. Um, there's also, I hate to say this, but misery loves company. There's also something to be said about these women who are either, many of them are struggling with husbands who are not fully engaged, or because most of my clients do happen to be heterosexual married couples, or that they are struggling with kids who have ADHD, and we're going through some trial and error around how to help enable their kids. Or they have sleep issues. And while I'm not a sleep expert, just going through those really hard, physically and mentally exhausting moments. It's just nice to be surrounded by people that are going through those same things. Also on a human level. So in my prior couple decades, I've been leading culture in major organizations. And culture is at the core, at the absolute core, it's aligning the values of a human with the values of an organization. And in some ways, that's what we're doing together. We are understanding their personal values, because their personal values are what informs what they prioritize, and what you prioritize is what informs how you spend your resources, your time, your money, and your energy. So my program is called the Life Management System, and the Life Management System is intended to be bespoke to you because your individual values are different than mine, or different than the other people sitting in the room. However, the methodology of aligning your values to inform your priorities, and your priorities to inform your time, your money, and where you spend your time, money, and energy, that's universal in this program. So what it's doing, it's allowing you to feel seen and heard on a very human level, to say, this is important to me because. And something about that validation and feeling like you're seen and heard just instantly humanizes you and makes you feel um, a, a little bit more at peace with who you are and what you're trying to create, because you do feel that people appreciate you for you and recognize the little nuances of why you tech and the way you tech. So I think that there's something about that that also creates a deeper sense of sisterhood. And I try to, because the life management system is truly customized to you, it is somewhat of an asynchronous journey. They are going through similar things at similar times, but I always prioritize when I'm working with somebody on their customized roadmap. I prioritize what's going to make the biggest difference for them, what's going to return the highest ROI on their life, to create as much time and stress freedom as possible. And then we layer on other things. So oftentimes people go through the same journey, but at different paces, because their burning need is very different. But I also try to take the girls through synchronous learning, like masterminds and that sort of thing. So that way they get to unpack topics like boundaries together, and get to really uh, process something from a million different angles, because boundaries are different, whether that be work boundaries or home boundaries or emotional boundaries or financial boundaries or like physical access to you. It's all very different. But being able to unpack that together makes the lessons themselves stickier. So I think it's a pretty powerful learning experience that helps punctuate the transformation and actually make it sticky. But something about going through it with other people just inherently increases that stickiness.
I love that. I love that. I think that you learned so much from the way other people's deal with situational
Yes.
difference,
Amen.
right? Like, I think that you see yourself so much sometimes in other people, right? Like
Yeah.
the way that they react, or what makes them tick, or any of those things. And I think that, like, it's hard because it's really about self-reflection at the end of it. Like, you have to see how you are. And unfortunately, it's hard to not compare to other people and other moms. And especially with social media, with like that is such a pain point for me, and I'm sure it is for you, because we are so out there in this mommy creator space. And there, you want to be authentic, but at the same time, like, you don't want anyone to feel less than when looking at you on the internet. So, like, there's such a duplicity there, because it's like you want to be authentic and you want to show all these things, but at the same time, you don't want anybody to feel bad per se because you're doing it this way, or you have the means to do it that way, or something of that. And yeah, it's just, it's so, it every time I like have a conversation with someone, it really brings me through a journey. And it's so funny, like, starting the podcast and talking to other moms and just having these real conversations. it just it, it's kind of a sense of therapy for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, I do the work myself, and yes, I go to therapy, and yes, all the things. But, having these conversations, it really just resonates and makes me realize, oh, like everything that I'm saying and living really makes sense, right? And
And you're not alone.
exactly. Exactly. You're not alone. There's other moms that have the same stressors that we have. And what we do and talking to moms on a daily basis, is important, and there's something that you said about systems, and that's really, something that resonates with us at One Thrive and me as a mom, as many of our listeners know, I'm the COO of One Thrive, which is our wall organizing system. And so for me, it's so crazy. One of the conversations that Courtney and I had before taping today, she was telling me about how some of her clients just don't even have a personal calendar. They have a work calendar, but they don't bring those skills into their home life, which is just so crazy to me because I'm like, how do you have children and not have a home calendar? Like, I, I got nothing there because I mean, I have two kids that go in very different directions. As Courtney stated before, we have these busy lives because it's required right now in life. And I'm like, that just boggles my mind. But, why do you think that these executive functioning skills are such a struggle for moms, even when they're so highly organized in their careers?
Yeah. I think, most of my clients do have personal calendars. Some did not in the beginning, but there's a difference between having one and knowing how to use it. So, by way of an example, most I engage a lot of people. Most is actually a hard word, but one of the questions I ask in my DMs, even on Instagram, I'm incredibly active at the Working Moms Movement account on Instagram, always trying to understand who's there, what they're struggling with, because it helps inform what the needs are in the market. And m- a lot of people surprisingly might have calendars, but they're not looking at it until the day. Like every day they wake up and they're surprised about what they have to do that day. And that's what blows my mind. So, what I try to do is get people to intentionally use something. But anyway, back to your actual question, Sammy, around um, why we believe some of those executive functioning skills exist. I mean, sometimes, as you just acknowledged with your own personal story, it's because we've conveniently had other people leaning in. So we haven't had to grow into that. I got feedback one time from a very dear friend at work. She was reporting to me, and during the performance reviews, I asked her, I was like, Catherine, I know you will be thoughtful in giving me feedback on how I show up for you and the rest of the team. So when we go through your performance review and we're reflecting on your growth opportunities, I want you to also share for me, like turn that mirror around for me so that way I know how I can best serve and how I can continue to grow. She's incredibly thoughtful and was super calculated about thinking through her answer. And she said, Courtney, I feel you. Like the whole team feels you really showing up for us. Like you have created a very engaged, super tight team. And we appreciate that. We feel we are learning from you, all the things. But where I think you can help us actually and be even better for yourself is creating a gap. And what she said, she continued to talk and say, part of that gap will help me be able to spend my time on my highest and best use, essentially. It will allow me to be more strategic. It will allow me to be, talking more at the executive level instead of leading the team. But she's like, moreover, it's going to force us to grow up because when you're not there holding our hands and we have to figure it out, all of a sudden we're learning skills that we otherwise didn't. So I think part of the reason executive functioning gaps exist in parents now is because they were enabled to exist earlier. They weren't, that gap did not exist there. Um, and that's a big one. Like if you don't learn, if you're not put in a position to learn those skills, to learn adulting 101, then you're never going to have them. But I also think it's a lot of parents, just practically speaking, are very easily able to get by when it's just them or just their spouse. The stakes are a lot lower. It's so much easier to squeeze in a dentist appointment and like at the drop of a dime, because you don't have to rearrange your schedule around it. It's like, oh, hey, I forgot I haven't been to the dentist in the past 6 months. I need to do that. You call up the dentist. They're like, yeah, we have an opening on Tuesday at 2. And you're like, great, I'll be there. But that's just not reality once kids come into the equation and you have to worry about working around childcare and all this other stuff. Then, as you know, when your second kid comes around, that's when you realize, like, oh wow, I thought that I was busy with one, and it is a very, very, very humbling process. Then you become completely underwater and you realize that you just need to do things differently. So calendaring is one of the gaps. So whether it be that they don't have a personal calendar or they don't actually use the calendar to serve them. Sometimes it's other systems or things like feeding your family or maintaining your home. Those need to exist just as presently in order for you to not be in a place of true overwhelm, in order to be more intentional with how you do life. But it all starts with you like filling that gap. And also I think it's back to where you started with your son, Sammy. It's incumbent on us to be stewards of facilitating that for our kids. Because if we're not doing that for them, if we're not creating that gap for them, the cycle will continue.
Exactly. Like that is exactly the point, right? Like if we don't change the way that we parent and we don't leave the space for our kids to really develop, then we're just repeating cycles, right? And it's like, no, did we have bad childhoods? No, not at all. But I think that, some of it is generational, right? Like our parents might have been more independent. And so in that regard, then they feel like they have to be more overbearing with us because their parents weren't with them. And it was a different time. I mean, like I think that we're very similarly aged, but, we're of the generation that the television literally said, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Like the fact that we lived during that time is so wild.
Right, right.
Like they wanted us to have that independence, right? But at the same time, there were barriers to that as well. But in every other facet of our lives, I feel like we're so calculated and things like, at least that's how I was, like I had a very overbearing mom, and don't get me wrong, it helped me a lot with, navigating a lot of things. And, but it's so interesting because it's like the way I'm sure my grandparents were very, I don't want to say like they weren't at all the touch points, but really though, there was a very few touch points along the way for, my mom and my uncle. And I know that because I hear the stories and how they were raised, but it was a different time, right? And so now with the internet, with the social media, with the YouTube, with all of the things, all of the technology and everything else, it's hard to give them space to grow. And then at the same time, make sure they're not growing up too fast, right? Like, I think that that's one of the things that I struggle with very much as a mom, because it's like, everybody's always like, oh, your son's so mature and this and that. And it's like, he hangs out with a lot of kids that are older than him because of our neighborhood. But it's like, oh, wait, am I doing something wrong? Like, before we wrap up part 1, I want to take a moment to thank our incredible sponsor and the company I proudly help lead, OneThrive. As COO of OneThrive, this partnership means so much to me because it's not just business, it's personal. OneThrive is a brand deeply committed to supporting moms in managing the mental load and all the beautifully chaotic moving pieces of daily life. And that's why I'm beyond excited to share something close to my heart, a brand new system I co-created called the Sami. Yep, named after me. The Sami is more than just a wall organizer. It's a visual planning system designed to support executive functioning, especially for moms balancing school schedules, meal plans, self-care, and the mental gymnastics of running a household. If you're craving more clarity and a little less chaos, this was made for you. Visit onethrive.com and check out the Sami. Created with intention, backed by research, and built for moms by moms. And here's the best part. In part 2 of this episode, I'll be sharing an exclusive offer just for listeners.
So definitely stick around.
A huge thank you to OneThrive for supporting this community and helping us move from survival mode to something more sustainable, fulfilling, and yes, thriving. Take a deep breath, refill that coffee, and I'll see you in part 2.